One humid morning I watched a steel gate slam shut on the only road to my farm, the sparks of a welder sealing me out like I was some trespasser on my own land. Behind that barricade stood Linda Harrow, president of the Cedar Ridge HOA, grinning like she had just conquered a kingdom. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. This woman actually believed she could cut me off from my home and just maybe get away with it. My name's Miles Carter. After 20 years as a military engineer, I thought I'd finally left the battles behind. I bought 60 acres of pasture and timber in Redstone County, a deed clean as a whistle lines, surveyed sharp as a knife. My dream was simple peace, privacy, the kind of freedom you can only buy with sweat and savings. But I miscalculated one thing. The only way in or out of my land was a gravel road that wound through Cedar Ridge, a subdivision now run like a dictatorship by Linda and her HOA. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding. People had used that road for decades, farmers' delivery trucks, even fire engines. But when Linda strutted up my driveway one morning, heels stabbing into the gravel, and told me flat out, join the HOA or lose access, I knew it wasn't a joke. She wasn't asking for community spirit. She was extorting me with a smile. I tried reasoning. I showed her the deed. I explained my property wasn't part of Cedar Ridge, never had been. She didn't care. Technicalities were her weapons. Her board members stood behind her nodding like bobbleheads ready to rubber stamp whatever she declared. When I refused to fold, she delivered her verdict. A gate. A massive steel gate across the only road to my home. That night I sat on my porch staring at the gravel that connected me to the world. It looked fragile, almost innocent, but under Linda's control it had become a choke chain around my neck. The next morning I woke to the grinding sound of machinery. I ran down to the boundary and saw it posts sunk deep beams, welded tight, motorized arms stretching across the road like a bear trap. And there she was again, Linda in a pressed blouse, arms folded, watching every spark with that smug smirk. When I demanded an explanation, she raised her glass of iced tea and said, "Community improvements." Improvements? She was digging my grave. I called the sheriff. The deputy showed up, weary eyes scratching his neck as he looked at the trench they dug in front of the gate. Technically, he said, they own this stretch. It's private. You might have a case in court, but those things take months, maybe years. Translation. I was on my own. The days that followed felt like siege warfare. I borrowed a dirt bike hacking trails through the woods just to reach town. Supplies came in by helicopter, dropped into my pasture by an old army buddy. Linda nearly choked on her lemonade watching that bird hover over her subdivision. She fired off complaints, noise violations, fake reports of property damage, even accusations of midnight construction I never did. Each certified letter felt like a dagger slipped under my door. But the worst came one stormy night. Sirens wailed in the distance and I saw an ambulance stuck at the trench. A neighbor had collapsed with heart trouble. Paramedics stood helpless, red lights flashing against the barricade. Linda called infrastructure. I rushed out shouting that I could get them through the woods. We dragged their gear across my rough trail, fighting mud and roots, losing precious minutes. The man lived barely, but the thought haunted me. Linda's petty war had nearly cost a life. Back in my workshop, I stared at the pile of letters, at the stack of threats, and for the first time I doubted myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I should just cut my losses, sell the land, leave this fight behind. I sat there in the dim light, feeling small, buried under the weight of her rules and my own stubborn pride. Was I crazy for resisting? Was I sacrificing peace just to win a point? But then I thought of that ambulance wheels spinning helplessly in the mud. I thought of the neighbor's terrified face. And I remembered who I was. I'd built bridges under fire. I'd rerouted convoys through hostile ground. I wasn't about to surrender to a woman with a clipboard. If Linda wanted to dig down, then fine. I'd go deeper. That night I unrolled old blueprints from my Army days, culverts, bypass tunnels, emergency routes. My fingers traced the lines like old friends. The solution was right there. A tunnel. I'd go under her barricade. I called 2 old service buddies. When they heard my story, they laughed. Some HOA witch is trying to blockade you. Hell yes, we're in. So under cover of darkness, we started digging pickaxes, drills, buckets of dirt hauled out by hand. We braced the walls with plywood, reinforced them with scrap steel, rigged up a ventilation fan powered by a salvaged generator. Every scoop of soil was a victory, every foot forward a middle finger to Linda's tyranny. Meanwhile, she strutted around the gate by day, bragging to her board that she had me cornered. She had no idea I was tunneling under her nose. As weeks passed, more neighbors began to drift my way. Farmers fined for hay bales, families harassed over barking dogs they'd all felt Linda's claws. Word spread about the tunnel, and volunteers showed up to help. We dug in shifts, covered the dirt with tarps, disguised barrels as feed. Our secret grew stronger by the night. And then came the moment. 2 weeks in the tunnel was complete, reinforced beams, gravel floor, airflow steady. It wasn't pretty, but it was safe. I rigged cameras to capture the reveal. At dawn, I eased my truck into the narrow passage. The walls groaned, headlights bouncing off steel braces, but the tunnel held. 100 feet later, daylight burst through, and suddenly I was on the county road, past the trench, past the gate, free. Linda arrived minutes later, clipboard in hand, ready to log another incident. She froze when she saw me leaning against my truck on the far side. Her jaw dropped, her eyes darting from the gate to the trench, to the faint mound of dirt concealing the tunnel. "No, no, no, no," she shrieked, clawing at the ground as my cameras rolled. Her meltdown went viral in hours, the Queen of Cedar Ridge undone by a tunnel. But Linda didn't surrender. She filed a lawsuit accusing me of illegal tunneling. I countered with everything: footage of the trench, the ambulance report, internal HOA emails leaked by her own board member where she bragged about using the road as leverage. My lawyer, Rebecca Sloan, stacked the evidence like bricks. Exhibit A through F, each one heavier than the last. In court, Linda strutted in pearls trying to look regal, but it crumbled fast. She admitted approving the trench. She dismissed safety standards as irrelevant. When the judge saw her emails, his face hardened. Witnesses testified the UPS driver. She screamed at the neighbor whose baby was born after paramedics used my tunnel. Each word tightened the noose. Rebecca laid it out plain. This isn't about bylaws. It's about abuse of power. The HOA turned a lifeline into a weapon. They endangered lives. The judge leaned back, steepled his fingers, and finally delivered his verdict. Permanent, unrestricted access to my land through Cedar Ridge Road. The gate and trench to be removed at HOA expense. Damages awarded. And Linda Harrow, personally fined, stripped of her title, removed as HOA president effective immediately. I watched the color drain from her face. The woman who once stood tall in heels on my gravel road now slumped like a deflated balloon, her empire crumbling in one sentence. The gallery erupted in hushed cheers. Reporters swarmed as I left, asking how it felt to win. I looked back at the courtroom doors where Linda sat frozen and said simply, "It feels like justice." And that's the lesson when someone tries to wall you in. Sometimes the only way forward is to dig your own way out.